Damien Whitmore was not supposed to be home. Not on a Wednesday afternoon. Not without notice. Not without an assistant calling ahead, a driver preparing the entrance, and a team of employees rushing to make sure every detail inside his oceanfront mansion was exactly as he expected. For years, Damien's life had operated with military precision. As the founder and CEO of Whitmore Global Holdings, a company worth billions of dollars, every hour of his day was scheduled weeks in advance. His staff knew where he would be before he did. His private pilots knew his travel plans months ahead. Nothing happened unexpectedly. But that morning, a major acquisition meeting in Manhattan had collapsed after one of the partners suddenly backed out of the deal. By noon, Damien found himself with something he rarely possessed: free time. Instead of spending the evening in a luxury hotel waiting for another meeting, he boarded his private jet and flew straight back to Newport, Rhode Island. No phone calls, no warnings, no announcements. He simply decided to go home. The black SUV carrying him from the airport rolled through the massive iron gates of the Whitmore estate shortly after 4 o'clock. As always, the mansion looked magnificent. The sprawling property stretched across several acres overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Perfectly trimmed hedges lined the long driveway. Marble fountains sparkled beneath the afternoon sun. Every window gleamed as if polished moments earlier. Everything appeared normal. Yet the moment Damien stepped through the front doors, something felt different. He stopped. His hand tightened around his leather briefcase. The house smelled unusual. Not bad, just different. Normally, the mansion carried the faint scent of expensive cleaning products and the cool, sterile air produced by its advanced climate control system. Today, however, another fragrance drifted through the foyer. Fresh flowers. Real flowers. Simple flowers. The scent was delicate and natural, completely unlike the expensive floral arrangements delivered weekly by luxury decorators. Damien frowned. Then he noticed something else. The house felt warm. Not physically warm. Emotionally warm. For months, ever since his mother became seriously ill, the mansion had felt more like a private medical facility than a family home. Every hallway seemed quiet. Every room seemed empty. Every conversation felt professional. But now something had changed. A strange sense of life filled the air. As he slowly walked toward the West Wing, where his mother lived, he noticed small touches that hadn't been there before. A vase of colorful wildflowers sat near a hallway window. A knitted blanket rested neatly over a reading chair. A half-finished cup of tea sat on a small table. Tiny details. Yet somehow they transformed the atmosphere completely. Damien continued down the corridor. His mother, Beatrice Whitmore, had been battling advanced cancer for 9 difficult months. Money had never been an issue. The best oncologists in America. Private nurses around the clock. Experimental treatments. Specialists from New York, Boston, and California. Damien had paid for everything. Every procedure. Every medication. Every consultation. He genuinely believed he was doing everything a devoted son should do. As he approached her bedroom, he noticed the door was slightly open. A soft golden light spilled into the hallway. Then he heard something. A quiet voice. A woman was speaking softly inside the room. Curious, Damien stepped closer and looked through the opening. The moment he saw what was happening, he froze completely. His heart stopped. And before we continue with this incredible story, welcome to Super Stories. Tell us where you're watching from, the United States, Canada, Australia, or anywhere else around the world. We'd love to hear from you. For several long seconds, Damien Whitmore could not move. He stood perfectly still outside the partially open bedroom door, staring at the scene unfolding before him. Everything else disappeared. The meetings, the contracts, the billion-dollar deals. None of it seemed important anymore. His mother sat in a comfortable armchair beside the large window overlooking the ocean. The late afternoon sunlight poured through the glass, casting a warm golden glow across the room. Beatrice Whitmore looked frail, far more fragile than she had during their last video call 3 days earlier. Her face was thinner. Her shoulders seemed smaller. The disease had stolen much of the strength she once carried so effortlessly. But something about her was different. For the first time in months, she looked peaceful. Not happy, not healthy, but peaceful. And sitting directly in front of her was a young woman Damien had never seen before. She couldn't have been older than 27. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple bun. Her gray work uniform identified her as one of the household employees. Yet she wasn't cleaning. She wasn't dusting furniture. She wasn't carrying laundry. She was carefully shaving the last remaining strands of silver hair from Beatrice's head. The electric clippers hummed softly. Tiny strands of hair drifted gently onto the floor. Damien felt a strange tightness in his chest. Then he noticed something even more shocking. The young woman was crying. Not loudly. Not dramatically. There were no sobs. No attempts to attract sympathy. Tears simply rolled silently down her cheeks as she continued her work. And Beatrice was holding the young woman's wrist. Not because she was afraid. Not because she wanted her to stop. She held it gently, tenderly, like someone offering comfort, like someone receiving comfort. The sight confused Damien. For 9 months he had paid enormous sums of money to ensure his mother received the best care available anywhere in the world. Yet he had never seen this expression on her face. Never. Not during hospital visits. Not during consultations. Not during treatment sessions. Not even during their private conversations. He suddenly realized something deeply unsettling. His mother looked more comforted by this unknown employee than she had ever looked during the care provided by his highly paid medical team. The realization hit him harder than he expected. Inside the room, the young woman switched off the clippers. The shaving was finished. Beatrice slowly opened her eyes. The young woman wiped away a tear and forced a gentle smile. "There," she whispered. Beatrice reached up and touched her head. For a moment she said nothing. Then she smiled softly. "You know what?" she said. "What, Mrs. Whitmore?" the young woman asked. "I was terrified of this." The young woman nodded. "I know. I thought losing my hair would make me feel less like myself." The young woman carefully folded a towel. "And," Beatrice's eyes glistened. "It doesn't." A small laugh escaped both women. Then something happened that Damien would never forget. The young woman knelt beside Beatrice's chair and gently rested her head against the older woman's arm. Beatrice immediately placed a hand on her shoulder. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The silence between them carried a level of trust that couldn't be manufactured. It couldn't be bought. It couldn't be scheduled. It simply existed. And Damien suddenly felt like an outsider watching a moment he was never meant to see. For the first time in years, guilt began creeping into his heart. When was the last time he had sat with his mother without checking his phone? When was the last time he had listened instead of solving? When was the last time he had held her hand? The questions arrived one after another, and he had no answers. Quietly, Damien stepped away from the door. Neither woman noticed him. He walked slowly down the hallway, his thoughts in complete chaos. By the time he reached his office, the image was burned into his memory. His mother, the young woman, the tears, the peace, the warmth. Something important was happening inside his own home. And somehow, despite owning every square foot of the mansion, Damien realized he knew absolutely nothing about it. Damien barely slept that night. He lay awake in the master's suite staring at the ceiling while the waves of the Atlantic crashed softly against the distant shoreline. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same image. His mother's peaceful smile, the young woman's tears, the gentle way they had comforted one another. It made no sense. Or at least it shouldn't have. By every measurable standard, Beatrice Whitmore was receiving exceptional care. Damien had spent millions ensuring that happened. The finest doctors, the most advanced treatments, private nurses around the clock, a nutrition specialist, a physical therapist, a pain management consultant, everything. Yet somehow a cleaning employee had become the person his mother trusted most. The thought bothered him more than he wanted to admit. At precisely 8 o'clock the following morning, Damien entered his office and immediately pressed the intercom button. "Send Mrs. Langford in." The estate manager arrived less than 5 minutes later. Margaret Langford had managed the Whitmore household for nearly 12 years. She was efficient, professional, and rarely caught off guard. Yet the moment she entered Damien's office, she sensed something unusual. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore." Damien didn't waste time. "I want the personnel records for every employee currently working in this house." Mrs. Langford blinked. "All of them, sir?" "Every single one." Within 20 minutes, several thick folders sat neatly arranged across Damien's desk. He began flipping through them methodically. Name after name. Position after position. Housekeepers. Gardeners. Drivers. Chefs. Security personnel. Then he found her. Clara Bennett. Age, 27. Position, housekeeping and laundry services. Employment duration, 5 months. No medical training. No caregiving certification. No nursing qualifications. Nothing in her file explained why she had been sitting beside his mother. Damien looked up. Tell me about Clara Bennett. Mrs. Langford hesitated. She's one of our best employees. That's not what I asked. The estate manager shifted uncomfortably. She's reliable. Always punctual. Rarely takes days off. The other staff respect her. Damien leaned back. Why was she in my mother's room yesterday? Mrs. Langford seemed surprised. I assumed you knew. Knew what? For a moment she looked unsure whether she should answer. Finally she spoke. Mrs. Whitmore requested her. Damien frowned. Requested her? Yes, sir. Explain. Mrs. Langford chose her words carefully. Several months ago, your mother started asking Clara to stay and talk with her after cleaning. Damien's eyes narrowed. And nobody informed me? At first it seemed harmless. She paused. Then they became friends. Friends. The word sounded strange. Almost absurd. His mother was 72 years old. Clara was 27. One was a billionaire's widow. The other was a housekeeper. Yet somehow the word fit. Damien closed the file. I want Clara in my office at 10 o'clock. Mrs. Langford nodded. Yes, sir. Exactly at 10, there was a knock on the door. Come in. Clara entered calmly. Unlike many employees summoned unexpectedly by Damien Whitmore, she didn't appear frightened. She wasn't arrogant. She wasn't nervous. She simply seemed prepared. Damien observed her carefully. The same dark hair. The same composed expression. The same quiet confidence he had noticed the previous day. She stopped in front of his desk. You wanted to see me, sir? Damien gestured toward a chair. Sit. She obeyed. For several moments neither spoke. The silence stretched. Most people found Damien's silence intimidating. Clara didn't. She simply waited. Finally Damien folded his hands together. I came home unexpectedly yesterday. Clara nodded once. I know. You know. Mrs. Langford told me this morning. Damien studied her face. No fear. No panic. No excuses. Interesting. I saw you with my mother. Clara remained silent. You were shaving her head. Yes. Why? The question hung heavily between them. For the first time, Clara's expression softened. Because she asked me to. Damien's voice became colder. That's not your job. No, sir. You were hired to clean this house. Yes, sir. Not to involve yourself in personal family matters. Clara looked directly into his eyes. Then she said something that immediately changed the atmosphere in the room. With respect, sir, your mother stopped needing a cleaner a long time ago. Damien stiffened. What exactly is that supposed to mean? Clara took a slow breath. It means she needed someone who would stay. The room suddenly became very quiet. And for the first time since the conversation began, Damien realized this meeting was not going to unfold the way he expected. The silence in the office grew heavier. Damien stared at Clara, trying to determine whether she had just crossed a line or spoken a truth he wasn't prepared to hear. What do you mean by that? He asked coldly. Clara remained calm. It means exactly what I said, sir. Damien's jaw tightened. My mother has 2 private nurses assigned to her every day. Yes. She has specialists available 24 hours a day. Yes. She has a medical team that most hospitals would envy. Clara nodded. I know. Then explain why you're sitting here telling me she needed someone else. For the first time, sadness appeared in Clara's eyes. Because treatment and companionship aren't the same thing. Damien leaned back in his chair. Go on. Clara took a deep breath. For a moment, she seemed to be deciding how much she should reveal. Then she spoke. 3 months ago, your mother woke up at 2 in the morning after a nightmare. Damien said nothing. She thought she was dying. The room remained silent. She was terrified. Clara looked down briefly before continuing. She called for the nurse. And the nurse came. Damien waited. Clara's voice became softer. She checked her vital signs. That's her job. Yes. Then what was the problem? Clara met his gaze. She left. Damien frowned. What was she supposed to do? Stay. The answer landed harder than Damien expected. Clara continued. Your mother wasn't having a medical emergency. She paused. She was scared. Damien looked away. Another night she couldn't sleep because she was afraid her hair would be gone by morning. Clara swallowed. The nurses reassured her medically. And They didn't understand emotionally. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Clara said something that made Damien uncomfortable. "Do you know what your mother's biggest fear is?" He answered immediately. "The cancer." Clara slowly shook her head. "No." Damien frowned. "Then what is it?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Being forgotten while she's still alive." The word struck him like a punch. Forgotten. Impossible. His mother lived in a mansion. She had an entire staff dedicated to her care. Millions of dollars were being spent on her treatment. How could she possibly feel forgotten? Yet deep down, Damien wasn't sure. Because the more he thought about it, the more he realized something disturbing. He hadn't spent a full day with his mother in almost a year. Business trips, board meetings, international conferences, investor calls. Every responsibility had always seemed urgent. Every absence had always felt justified. And suddenly those excuses sounded hollow. Clara continued speaking. "Your mother talks about you all the time." Damien looked up sharply. "She does. Every day." Something tightened in his chest. "What does she say?" Clara hesitated. Then she answered honestly. "Mostly she worries." "Worries? About you?" Damien blinked. "About me? She says you're lonely." That caught him completely off guard. Lonely? The billionaire businessman surrounded by executives, assistants, advisors, and business partners? The man with houses on 3 continents? The man featured on magazine covers? Lonely? The idea sounded ridiculous. Yet something about it hurt. Because maybe it wasn't entirely wrong. Before Damien could respond, a knock sounded on the office door. Then it opened. Both Damien and Clara turned. And froze. Beatrice Whitmore sat in her wheelchair. A blanket covered her lap. Her face looked pale. But her eyes were sharp. Very sharp. The nurse standing behind her looked uncomfortable. Clearly, Beatrice had insisted on coming. "Mother," Damien said, immediately standing. "What are you doing out of bed?" Beatrice raised one thin hand. "Enough." Her voice was weak. Yet it carried authority. The authority only a mother possesses. She looked directly at her son. "I've heard enough of this conversation." Damien's expression changed. "Mother, you shouldn't be standing in the hallway." "Then perhaps you shouldn't be interrogating the only person in this house who actually listens to me." The room went silent. Clara immediately stood. "Mrs. Whitmore, please." "No." Beatrice cut her off gently. Then she pointed toward the chair. "Sit down, Clara." Clara obeyed. Beatrice slowly wheeled herself farther into the office. Her eyes never left Damien. And for the first time in many years, the billionaire businessman felt exactly like a little boy who had been caught doing something wrong. What Beatrice said next would change everything. Of the office. The room fell completely silent. Damien remained standing behind his desk, unsure of what to say. For years, he had commanded boardrooms filled with powerful executives. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals with seasoned investors. He had spoken confidently before thousands of shareholders. Yet at that moment, facing his frail mother, he felt powerless. Beatrice looked from Damien to Clara and back again. Then she spoke. "Tell me something, Damien." Her voice was weak, but every word carried weight. "When was the last time you sat with me for no reason?" Damien opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Beatrice nodded sadly. "That's what I thought." "Mother." "No." She raised a trembling hand. "Let me finish." The office became so quiet that even the ticking of the antique wall clock seemed loud. "You have given me excellent doctors." Damien swallowed. "You have paid for every treatment." He nodded. "You have spent more money trying to save me than most families will ever see in their entire lives." A long pause followed. "But you haven't spent time." The words hit harder than any criticism Damien had ever received. Because they were true. Painfully true. Beatrice's eyes glistened. "Do you know what cancer does, Damien?" He looked at her silently. "It doesn't just attack your body." Her voice trembled. "It attacks your dignity." Clara lowered her gaze. Beatrice continued. "One day you're independent." She paused. "The next day someone has to help you stand." Another pause. "Then someone has to help you bathe." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then someone has to help you eat." Damien felt his chest tighten. "And eventually," she whispered, "you start wondering whether people still see you as a person." The room was completely still. Beatrice slowly turned toward Clara. "This young woman never made me feel like a burden." Clara's eyes immediately filled with tears. "Mrs. Whitmore." "No, dear." Beatrice smiled softly. "You deserve to hear this." She looked back at Damien. When my hair started falling out, I cried. Damien lowered his eyes. When I was too embarrassed to look in a mirror, Clara sat beside me. A tear rolled down Beatrice's cheek. When I couldn't sleep, she stayed. Damien's throat tightened. When I was afraid, she listened. The silence became unbearable. Then Beatrice delivered the sentence that shattered him. She gave me something your money couldn't buy. Damien looked up. What? Beatrice's voice softened. Her presence. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Damien quietly sat down. For the first time in years, he wasn't acting like a CEO. He was simply a son realizing how much he had missed. Beatrice watched him carefully. I know you love me. The words surprised him. You do? He asked quietly. A faint smile appeared on her face. Of course I do. Tears gathered in Damien's eyes. Then why does it feel like I've failed you? Beatrice's expression softened. Because you're finally being honest with yourself. The truth settled over the room. For years, Damien had believed that solving problems meant paying for solutions. Need better care? Hire better doctors. Need more support? Hire more staff. Need more comfort? Spend more money. But some things couldn't be delegated. Some things required showing up. Beatrice suddenly pointed toward Clara. If you fire her, I'm leaving this house. Damien blinked. What? You heard me. Mother, that's ridiculous. No. Her eyes flashed. I'm serious. The nurse behind her looked stunned. So did Clara. Beatrice folded her arms. As far as I'm concerned, Clara stays. Damien looked at Clara, then at his mother, then back at Clara. Finally, he exhaled. No one is firing her. The tension in the room immediately eased. Beatrice smiled victoriously. Good. Then she looked at Clara. See, sometimes he listens. For the first time, Clara laughed softly. Even Damien couldn't stop the small smile that appeared on his face. But the conversation wasn't over. Because later that night, Damien would discover something about Clara that would shock him far more than anything he had learned that day. Something hidden deep inside the mansion's security records. Something that would completely change the way he viewed the young housekeeper forever. That night, long after the mansion had fallen silent, Damien Whitmore sat alone in his office. The moonlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting pale shadows across the room. Stacks of financial reports sat untouched on his desk. Normally, he would have spent hours reviewing contracts and investment projections. Tonight, he couldn't focus on any of it. His mother's words kept replaying in his mind. She gave me something your money couldn't buy. The sentence hurt because it was true. For years, Damien had measured love through provision. If someone needed help, he paid for it. If a problem appeared, he hired experts. If a crisis emerged, he threw resources at it until it disappeared. That strategy had built an empire. But it was failing him as a son. Unable to shake the feeling, Damien opened the estate security system on his computer. Every entrance and exit from the mansion was recorded. Every staff member's movements were logged. At first, he wasn't entirely sure what he was looking for. Then he typed in one name, Clara Bennett. The records appeared instantly. Damien began scrolling. At first, everything looked normal. Clock in, 8 a.m. Clock out, 6 p.m. Regular shifts. Standard schedules. Nothing unusual. Then something caught his eye. A late-night entry. 11:14 p.m. Damien frowned. Clara wasn't scheduled that night. He kept reading. Another entry. 12:07 a.m. Another. 10:53 p.m. Another. 1:22 a.m. His eyes narrowed. The further back he searched, the stranger the pattern became. Over and over again, Clara had returned to the estate after her shifts ended. Sometimes late at night. Sometimes before sunrise. Sometimes staying until morning. None of it was paid. None of it was required. None of it appeared on her schedule. Damien sat upright. What is this? He muttered. He pulled up 6 months of records. Then he counted. 17. 17 unpaid visits. 17 nights when Clara had voluntarily come back to the mansion. 17 times she had chosen to spend her own free time inside the home of a dying woman. Damien stared at the screen. Most employees couldn't wait to leave after work. Most people would have avoided returning to a house filled with sickness and sadness. Yet Clara kept coming back. Why? The question lingered in his mind. Then he noticed something else. A series of small reimbursement requests. Not from Clara. From the estate's purchases of $20. Nothing significant. Yet Damien put down his dreams. Dreamed of peppermint lozenges, a lavender pillow spray, soft wool socks, a hand-knitted blanket. The list went on. None of them were medical necessities. None were prescribed by doctors. All were comfort items. Damien immediately picked up his phone. Within minutes, Mrs. Langford answered. "Sir, I need an explanation." "For what?" "The purchases connected to Clara Bennett." A pause followed. Then Mrs. Langford sighed. "Oh, what does that mean?" Another pause. "Those weren't charged to the estate." Damien froze. "What?" "Clara paid for them herself." His grip tightened around the phone. "Herself?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" Mrs. Langford hesitated. Then she answered softly. "Because Mrs. Whitmore liked them." The words hung in the air. Damien looked down at the list again. The total value of all the purchases combined was less than what he spent on lunch during most business meetings. Yet somehow they meant more. Far more. He ended the call and sat motionless. A young woman earning a modest salary had spent her own money trying to make his mother's final months easier. Not because anyone asked her to. Not because she expected a reward. Not because she wanted recognition. Simply because she cared. For the first time, Damien felt ashamed. Ashamed that he hadn't noticed. Ashamed that he hadn't asked. Ashamed that a stranger had seen needs he had completely overlooked. Hours later, unable to sleep, Damien left his office and walked quietly through the dark mansion. As he passed his mother's room, he noticed a warm glow beneath the door. It was nearly midnight. Curious, he stepped closer. The door was slightly open. He looked inside, and what he saw made him stop once again. Clara was sitting beside Beatrice's bed. A worn paperback novel rested in her hands. She was reading aloud in a gentle whisper. Beatrice was asleep, yet Clara kept reading. Page after page. Chapter after chapter. As though her voice alone was protecting the old woman from loneliness. Damien remained in the doorway, listening, watching, and for the first time in many years, he began to understand what true compassion looked like. But what he would learn about Clara the following week would reveal an even bigger secret. One she had desperately tried to keep hidden from everyone. The next morning, Damien arrived at breakfast earlier than usual. For years, his mornings had followed the same rigid pattern. Coffee, financial news, emails, conference calls. No distractions, no exceptions. But this morning was different. His thoughts kept returning to Clara. The unpaid nights, the small purchases, the quiet acts of kindness nobody had noticed. Or perhaps nobody had bothered to notice. As he sat at the long dining table, Mrs. Langford entered carrying several documents. "Sir, these are the reports you requested." Damien nodded. He skimmed through them absent-mindedly until one page caught his attention. It was a leave request. Submitted by Clara. Denied. He frowned. Then he looked closer. The request had been submitted 3 separate times over the previous 4 months. And denied every time. His expression darkened. Later that afternoon, Damien found Clara arranging flowers in a sitting room near the west wing. The sight surprised him. For the first time, he realized she was the reason the mansion felt different. The flowers, the blankets, the books, the warmth. It had all started after she arrived. "Clara." She turned immediately. "Mr. Whitmore, I need to ask you something." She nodded politely. "Of course." Damien held up the leave request. Her face changed instantly. A flash of discomfort crossed her features. Why were these denied? For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she looked away. "It's not important. It was important enough for you to apply 3 times. Silence. "Clara." She exhaled slowly. "My younger brother is sick." Damien's eyes narrowed. "Sick how?" She hesitated. The answer clearly wasn't something she enjoyed discussing. "He was born with a heart condition." The room became quiet. Damien lowered the paper. "How serious is it?" "Very." The single word carried months of exhaustion. "He needs surgery." Damien stared at her. "And the requests?" "I wanted time off to take him to appointments." "Why were they denied?" Clara gave a small shrug. "We were short-staffed." Damien felt irritation rising. Not toward Clara. Toward the system he had built. A system so focused on efficiency that nobody had bothered asking why a hard-working employee needed leave 3 separate times. "When is the surgery?" Clara looked down. "We can't afford it." The words landed heavily. For several moments neither spoke. Damien studied her carefully. She wasn't asking for help. She wasn't fishing for sympathy. She wasn't even complaining. She was simply stating a fact. The same calm honesty she used when speaking about his mother. And somehow that made it even harder to hear. That evening, Damien couldn't stop thinking about it. He remembered Clara sitting beside Beatrice's bed, reading late into the night, buying comfort items with her own money, giving time she couldn't afford to give, all while carrying the burden of a sick younger brother. The more he thought about it, the more one question haunted him. Why? Why would someone already struggling financially spend so much energy helping another family? Most people would have focused entirely on their own problems. Yet Clara somehow found room in her heart for everyone else. 3 days later, Damien made a series of phone calls. He contacted one of the country's leading cardiac surgeons, then a hospital administrator, then a medical foundation he quietly funded. He gave very specific instructions. No publicity, no announcements, no recognition, and most importantly, no mention of his name. The arrangements were completed within 48 hours. The surgery was approved. The costs were covered. The date was scheduled. And Clara knew absolutely nothing about it. A week later, Damien was leaving his office when he heard hurried footsteps approaching. He turned. Clara stood in the hallway. Her eyes were red. Her hands trembled. For a terrifying moment, Damien thought something had happened to Beatrice. Then Clara spoke. "My brother got approved." Damien remained silent. "The hospital called this morning." Her voice cracked. "They said everything is covered." Damien said nothing. Tears filled Clara's eyes. "I know it was you." For several seconds neither moved. Then Damien quietly replied, "You don't know that." A small laugh escaped her. "You're not nearly as mysterious as you think you are." For the first time, Damien actually smiled. A genuine smile. Not the carefully rehearsed smile used during interviews and public appearances. A real one. Clara's eyes softened. "You didn't have to do that." Damien looked at her for a moment. Then he answered honestly, "Yes, I did." She shook her head. "No." His expression became serious. "You helped my mother when nobody else truly did." The hallway fell silent. Then Damien added quietly, "You reminded me what matters." Clara looked away, overwhelmed. But neither of them noticed the figure standing at the far end of the corridor. Beatrice, watching everything, and smiling, because for the first time in a very long time, she wasn't worried about her son anymore. She was beginning to see the man he was becoming. Winter arrived early in Newport. The ocean beyond the Whitmore estate turned dark gray beneath heavy clouds, and cold winds swept across the cliffs day and night. Inside the mansion, however, something had changed. The house no longer felt cold. Fresh flowers appeared in nearly every room. Soft music sometimes drifted through the hallways. The staff smiled more. Even Mrs. Langford seemed less tense. And at the center of it all was Beatrice Whitmore. Though her body was growing weaker, her spirit seemed lighter. For the first time since her diagnosis, she was no longer facing her illness alone. Damien had begun spending most evenings with her. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they watched old movies. Sometimes they simply sat together in silence while the fireplace crackled nearby. One evening, Beatrice glanced at her son and smiled. "You know, when you were 10 years old, you never stopped talking." Damien laughed. "I highly doubt that." "Oh, it's true." She pointed at him. "You talked so much your father used to beg for 5 minutes of silence." Damien shook his head. "I don't remember that." "That's because you've spent the last 20 years becoming serious." Her smile softened. "Too serious." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Beatrice reached for his hand. "Thank you." Damien looked surprised. "For what?" "For coming back." The words hit him unexpectedly. Because she wasn't talking about the mansion. She was talking about her life. Damien squeezed her hand gently. "I'm sorry it took me so long." Beatrice's eyes glistened. "But you came." A quiet silence followed. Then Clara entered carrying tea. As always, she moved quietly, never demanding attention. Yet somehow her presence immediately made the room feel warmer. Beatrice smiled. "There she is." Clara laughed softly. "Mrs. Whitmore, you're making me sound important." "You are important." The young woman looked embarrassed. Damien noticed. And so did Beatrice. A mischievous smile appeared on the older woman's face. One Damien recognized immediately. It was the same smile she used when she was about to say something dangerous. "Oh dear," Damien muttered. Beatrice ignored him. "You know, Clara, my son wasn't always impossible to deal with." "Mother." I'm serious. Clara struggled not to laugh. Beatrice pointed at Damien. When he was 12, he cried because a stray puppy got lost. Damien covered his face. Please stop. When he was 16, he spent 3 days building a treehouse for a friend. Clara laughed openly now. And to Damien's surprise, hearing her laugh made him smile too. For a few precious minutes, the room felt normal. Not like a cancer patient's bedroom. Not like the final chapter of someone's life. Just a room filled with people who cared about one another. Later that night, after Clara had left and the nurses completed their rounds, Beatrice looked at Damien thoughtfully. Can I ask you something? Of course. What do you see when you look at Clara? The question caught him off guard. Damien frowned. What kind of question is that? A simple one. He thought for a moment. I see someone kind. Beatrice nodded. Good. I see someone brave. Another nod. I see someone who cares about people. Beatrice smiled. Good answer. Damien narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Why are we having this conversation? Beatrice laughed weakly. No reason. There was definitely a reason. But before Damien could press further, a sudden coughing fit overtook her. A violent one. Much worse than usual. Damien was instantly on his feet. The nurse rushed in. The room changed immediately. The warmth disappeared. Reality returned. For nearly 10 minutes, the medical team worked around Beatrice. By the time everything settled, she looked exhausted. Far more exhausted than Damien had ever seen her. The doctor arrived shortly afterward. His expression alone told Damien what he needed to know. The cancer was winning. Fast. After examining Beatrice, the doctor requested a private conversation. Damien followed him into the hallway. The doctor's voice was gentle. Mr. Whitmore. Damien's stomach tightened. We're entering the final stage. The words seemed to echo. Final stage. Despite months of treatments, consultations, and optimism, hearing it spoken aloud felt devastating. How long? Damien asked quietly. The doctor hesitated, then answered honestly. Perhaps a few weeks. The hallway suddenly felt smaller. Damien stared at the floor. A few weeks. That was all. All the money in the world. All the influence. All the connections. And he couldn't buy one more year. Not even one more month. The doctor placed a hand on his shoulder. The best thing you can do now is be with her. Damien nodded slowly. As the doctor walked away, Damien remained standing there. Alone. Processing the reality he had spent months avoiding. Then he looked through the partially open bedroom door. Inside, Clara was sitting beside Beatrice's bed, holding her hand, speaking softly, comforting her. And for the first time, Damien realized something terrifying. He wasn't the only one afraid of losing Beatrice. Clara was too. But neither of them knew that Beatrice had already made one final decision. A decision that would shock everyone in the mansion after she was gone. The following days passed like grains of sand slipping through an hourglass. Everyone in the Whitmore mansion felt it. The nurses felt it. Mrs. Langford felt it. Damien felt it. And most of all, Beatrice felt it. The cancer was advancing rapidly. Some mornings she barely had enough strength to sit up in bed. Other days she drifted in and out of sleep for hours at a time. Yet strangely, she seemed more at peace than ever before. It was as though she had stopped fighting the inevitable and started focusing on what truly mattered. The people she loved. One snowy afternoon, Beatrice asked for everyone to leave her room except Damien and Clara. The request surprised them both. Once the door closed, Beatrice smiled weakly. There. She settled against her pillows. That's better. Damien pulled his chair closer. How are you feeling? Beatrice gave him a look. Terrible. The three of them laughed softly. Then silence returned. Outside the large windows, snowflakes drifted gently toward the ground. Inside, the room felt warm, comfortable, safe. After several minutes, Beatrice spoke again. Do you know what my biggest regret was? Damien immediately shook his head. I don't want to hear you talk like that. Humor me. He reluctantly nodded. Beatrice looked toward the window. For a long time, I thought I had failed you. Damien stared at her. What? She smiled sadly. Your father died when you were young. That wasn't your fault. I know. But after he passed, I focused so much on making sure you succeeded that I forgot to teach you something equally important. Damien swallowed. What? How to slow down. The words landed gently but powerfully. Beatrice looked at him with loving eyes. You became successful beyond my wildest dreams. A tear rolled down her cheek. But somewhere along the way, You started measuring your worth by your accomplishments. Damien couldn't look at her, because she was right. Every victory led to another goal. Every achievement led to another challenge. Every milestone became another starting line. Nothing ever felt like enough. Beatrice reached for his hand. You don't have to earn love, Damien. His eyes immediately filled with tears. You never did. The room fell silent. Then Beatrice turned toward Clara. The young woman quickly wiped away her own tears. Beatrice smiled. And you? Clara shook her head. No. Yes. The older woman squeezed her hand. You're going to listen. A small laugh escaped Clara. Beatrice's expression softened. When you first came to this house, I thought you were shy. I was. You still are. They both smiled. But you have one of the strongest hearts I've ever known. Clara looked down. Embarrassed. Emotional. Overwhelmed. You sat with me when nobody else did. Beatrice's voice trembled. You reminded me that kindness still exists. Clara's eyes overflowed. Mrs. Whitmore. No. Beatrice smiled. You call me Beatrice now. That made Clara cry even harder. The older woman laughed softly. There you are. For the next hour they talked. About childhood memories. About family. About mistakes. About life. It was one of those rare conversations people remember forever. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because everyone knew it mattered. As evening approached, Beatrice became tired. Very tired. The nurses returned. The doctor checked on her. Damien stayed beside the bed. Clara remained nearby. And as darkness settled outside, Beatrice drifted peacefully to sleep. The next morning, she did not wake up. She passed away quietly before sunrise. No pain. No fear. No struggle. Just peace. Damien was sitting beside her when it happened. One moment he was holding her hand. The next, he realized she was gone. The grief hit him instantly. For the first time in decades, Damien Whitmore cried without restraint. Not as a businessman. Not as a billionaire. Not as a public figure. As a son. A son saying goodbye to his mother. The funeral took place a week later. Friends, business leaders, neighbors, and family members came from across the country. Everyone spoke about Beatrice's generosity, her grace, her strength. But the biggest surprise came afterward, when her attorney requested a private meeting, because Beatrice had left behind one final letter, and what was written inside would change both Damien's life and Clara's future forever. 3 days after the funeral, the Whitmore mansion felt emptier than it ever had before. The flowers had begun to fade. The visitors had returned home. The sympathy messages had stopped arriving. For the first time since Beatrice's passing, the silence felt permanent. Damien sat alone in his mother's favorite sitting room, staring out at the gray Atlantic Ocean. Every corner of the house reminded him of her. The books she loved. The chair where she spent countless afternoons. The teacup she always insisted on using. It was amazing how one person could leave a room and somehow take the warmth with them. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Whitmore? It was the family attorney. Damien nodded. Come in. The attorney entered carrying a sealed envelope. There is one final matter regarding your mother's wishes. Damien looked at the envelope. His chest tightened. What is it? A personal letter. The attorney placed it gently on the table. Your mother instructed that it be opened after the funeral. Damien stared at the familiar handwriting. His mother's handwriting. For several moments, he couldn't move. Then slowly, he opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The room fell silent as he began to read. My dearest Damien, if you're reading this, then I've already gone where pain can no longer follow. Please don't spend your life regretting what you didn't do. Instead, focus on what you do next. I know you love me. I always knew. Even when you were too busy. Even when you were too far away. Even when you forgot how to show it. Never doubt that I knew. But I want you to remember something important. Success is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. Do not spend the rest of your life chasing the greatest moments for your final life are not the expensive. They were the conversations, the laughter, the companionship, the simple presence of people who cared. And speaking of people who care, take care of Clara. Not because she needs saving. She doesn't. She is stronger than most people I have ever known. Take care of her because she reminded both of us what truly matters. And Damien, open your heart. Life becomes much richer when you do. Love, Mom. By the time Damien reached the end, tears blurred the words. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Then he carefully folded the letter. The attorney cleared his throat. "There is one more thing." Damien looked up. "What?" "Mrs. Whitmore established a charitable foundation shortly before her passing." Damien frowned. "A foundation?" The attorney nodded. "She named it the Beatrice House." Damien's eyes widened. "What does it do?" "It provides emotional support, companionship, and comfort services for cancer patients and elderly individuals who are facing serious illness." The room became quiet. Damien smiled through his tears. Even at the very end, his mother had been thinking about others. Just like Clara. A month later, the Beatrice House officially opened its doors. Families from across Rhode Island began receiving support. Volunteers visited lonely patients. Companions sat with people who had nobody else. Books were read. Hands were held. Conversations happened. No one was treated like a diagnosis. No one was treated like a burden. And standing beside Damien during the opening ceremony was Clara Bennett. Not as a maid. Not as an employee. But as the Foundation's first director of patient care. The crowd applauded as Damien stepped to the microphone. For a moment, he looked at the audience. Then at Clara. Then at the large portrait of his mother displayed behind them. And he smiled. "My mother taught me many things," he said. "But her final lesson was the most important." He paused. "People need more than medicine." The crowd listened carefully. "They need dignity." A few heads nodded. "They need kindness." More nods. "They need compassion." The applause began. And Damien continued. "Most importantly, they need someone willing to stay." The crowd rose to its feet. Clara wiped away tears. And for the first time since losing his mother, Damien felt something unexpected. Peace. Moral lessons from this story. 1. Money can buy treatment, but it cannot buy genuine love and companionship. 2. Being physically present for the people you love is often more valuable than anything you can purchase for them. 3. Never underestimate the power of kindness. Small acts can change someone's entire life. 4. A person's job title does not determine their worth. Greatness is measured by character, not status. 5. Compassion is one of the most valuable gifts a human being can give another. 6. Success means little if it causes you to neglect the people who matter most. 7. Listen to people when they are hurting. Sometimes they need understanding more than solutions. 8. Do not wait until it is too late to tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. 9. True wealth is not measured by what you own, but by the lives you touch. 10. The greatest legacy anyone can leave behind is love, kindness, and the difference they made in other people's lives. If this story touched your heart, remember to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs this message today. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from: America, Canada, Australia, or anywhere else in the world. Your support helps Super Stories continue bringing meaningful stories like this one to life.